morning. We are on a morning version of We'll Sing and We'll Shout. This is your host, Steve Hansen. I actually recorded last night. I recorded last night from about 10 p.m. Mountain Time until 11 p.m. And I had a talk with my sister afterwards. And I decided to take that recording down for the time being. It was a really good recording. It was a really true recording. It was a really good story. But but I want to take a deeper look into that and just make sure that I'm comfortable with what I was putting up there last night. So I will probably so I may end up reposting that, or I may consider otherwise. We'll see. But I wanted to jump in here this morning because I didn't get anything posted there last night. Then, or the post that I put up, I took down. So I thought I'd pop in here this morning and talk about the Wizard of Oz and and about that amazing story that I watched when I was a young child. Maybe 6 or 7 years old is when we first watched the Wizard of Oz there in the farmhouse that came across the TV. And but before I jump into that, I want to talk a little bit about story and about why we should tell our stories, why we should share our stories, why we should write our stories. Because here's the thing: if we don't get in here, and obviously we don't have to do this across the Facebook Live, but if we don't write our stories, then someone else likely will. And depending on how much we've left behind, and depending on what kind of impressions we've left behind, that story may be a really amazing book that somebody else creates for us, or it might be a sentence. It might be a sentence that says, you know, Grandpa so and so lived, and we think he was born here and he died here, and maybe there'll be some accurate dates, and that might be the extent of your story. And but the other thing is, even if somebody writes an amazing book about you, even if somebody were to take all my journals and everything else that I've left behind and stories and interviewed, a dozen people that have surrounded me in life and said, okay, who was this guy? And not that somebody would actually do this, but people do this for people like presidents of the United States or our church leaders or sports, athletic figures or whatever. They gather all this information and they put these amazing books together. And obviously, there's a lot of truth and accuracy that comes across there. But I can tell you this in my own personal life, and I bet you this would be true for 99% of the people, that no matter how much digging this person did, they would not be able to tell the real story. They would not be able to tell the real stories of what actually really impacted and shaped this person's life. And no matter how accurate everything else would be that they would share, and it likely would be, but you can't read through a journal and figure out what's really on inside somebody's heart and mind and what has really taken place and what really impacted their lives. And I know that because I can look through my own journal. I can say, okay, this is like, there's a lot of really good story here, and there's a lot of really good hints about things that were going on and what was really transpiring inside of here and the kind of choices I was making and why I was making those choices. There's a lot of really good hints here, but nobody could read my journal and catch these stories. Like it's not there. And at the time that the story was going on, I didn't understand the story myself. I didn't understand. I didn't see all these things that were impacting me as a teenage boy. And so that is why I think it is so important that we do share our stories and that we tell our own story so we can tell the real story and that people can then understand and relate. Because when we're only putting half truths out there, regardless of how true they may be, if we're only putting half of the truth out there, then people are hardly able to relate to that with their own life because we all live these very real lives. And so I wanted to share that. I wanted to share those thoughts this morning because I feel very strongly about all that. I know that if somebody were to try to write a book about me, it might be a really interesting book, and they would have a lot of material to work with, and they could probably get some really interesting interviews from siblings and from children and parents, if they had access to them, and aunts and uncles and whatever else. They could write an amazing story, but they wouldn't come anywhere close to being able to write the story that I could write about myself because I'm the one who's been living in here for 59 and a half years. And I know with a lot of precision as to exactly what was taking place and exactly what I was thinking and feeling. And if you don't write that story, then you've hardly written the real story. So enough about a story here for a moment. This week, just a couple days ago, I got invited to some training here locally, and it was kind of a last minute thing. This training was really meant for people who are kind of at a higher level within our organization. And then at the last moment, they decided to include me and some others, and that was. I'm trying to make sure that this is popping up here. Still getting used to my technology a little bit. I'm not seeing it. Um, so I'm a little puzzled, but um, got invited to this training here locally. And I have gone to places like Las Vegas and Fort Lauderdale for similar training. So for this training to be like a half mile away from me is a real treat. So I will pop over there in about a half hour, and it'll take me about 5 minutes to get there. And yesterday we were at this training, and it was a lot of really good people skills stuff. Obviously, we're in the business of saving lives and enhancing lives and transforming lives. And in order to do that, you have to be able to reach out and touch people and reach people and talk to people. And the issues that we want to talk about health and wellness and things like obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and a host of other things are not things that are typically easy to just walk up and confront somebody with. And so we're discussing a lot of those kind of things and discussing people skills and the fact that we're very much in the people business. And that was all really good yesterday. I really enjoyed so much of that. One of the things that they're also doing that I both love and hate is they're making us role play and they're making us practice and do some things instead of just sitting in a classroom all day long and absorbing a bunch of training. We're actually having to do things, and that is both painful and helpful. It's painful because nobody really often likes to have to do something. We'd rather just think about how we're going to do that when we get home, but by forcing us to do the role play, we're getting some good practice in, and that is actually really helpful. Uh, Today we will be doing some additional role playing and about how to just approach people and talk to them, whether maybe it would be at a door setting or at an airport or at a restaurant or wherever. Now, what's interesting is I just got back from Tahiti, and I got to exercise these skills down in Tahiti in a number of different settings. And I did exercise these skills that I had developed as a missionary um, back in 1987, 88. So not quite 40 years ago, but almost. And I was a pretty bold and brave and courageous missionary in many settings, but I wasn't always. And it also kind of depends on the day. Sometimes you're feeling it, just like on the basketball court. Sometimes you're ready to go out there and score, and other days you're not even sure where that basket is. But but I was feeling it a lot there in Tahiti, and I was able to talk to and interact with a lot of people, and I had a lot of really positive interactions, and I had some neutral interactions, but I didn't have any bad interactions there in Tahiti. I didn't have anybody, get upset with me or anything like that. So that all went really well. The one exception to that didn't actually take place in Tahiti. It took place at LAX on our way home. On our way home, we got stuck in LAX for about 8 hours because our flight was delayed 4 hours. We were supposed to have like a 3 hour layover, and it ended up 3.5, whatever, ended up being closer to an 8 hour layover. So, and we were off in this little American Airlines uh, terminal building, and there wasn't a whole lot of eating options, which I didn't end up eating there anyway. But there weren't. It just wasn't a very great place to spend 8 hours. A lot of airports are pretty attractive, and you can walk around a lot. You can see a lot of people and things to look at and whatever. That was not the case here. This was just a ridiculous place to have to spend 8 hours. But I thought, I'm here for a reason, so I'm going to try to talk to some people and show them my before and after picture, and I'm going to see if I can, you know, create some customers here on the way home, talk to and meet some new people. And so I was kind of walking around, and I can tell you what, in our world today, it is not difficult to walk around and find people that need help with their metabolism. And it shows up in a number of ways, but it also doesn't show up in a number of ways. There's a lot of people who might look healthy who can be very unhealthy. And, but I'm looking for the ones who are obviously not healthy. And I didn't have to look very far. But I saw this one guy kind of sitting over by himself, maybe my age. Yeah, probably right around there. I always think I'm younger, but he was probably, he might even have been a little bit younger than me. Pretty good sized fella, a good sized fella who looked like he didn't need to be good size. And, pretty roly poly, kind of sitting there by himself in an area by himself. And I thought, okay, this will be a good place to start because there's not anybody else around. So I can feel comfortable having a discussion with this guy. But he was on the phone. So I was kind of walking back and forth, just getting some steps in, walking down this small terminal building. And finally he was off the phone. He's just kind of sitting there. And so I decided, okay, now's my chance. I got my before and after picture on the phone. I'm ready to go up and talk to him. And I go up and talk to him and I just say, "Hey, can I share something with you?" And at first he just gives me this blank stare, like he was looking right through me. And so I said again, "Hey, can I share something with you?" And he just gave me this look like maybe I was a terrorist asking him to carry a bomb on the plane. And he said, "No." And I was like, Wow, okay. All right. Well, we shut that one down." So that hit me pretty hard after all the positive experiences that I had down in Tahiti and the neutral experiences. That's what I would definitely call a negative experience. Like that didn't feel good to have somebody just shut me down like that. In fact, it hit me so hard that I'd had some other people there that I thought maybe I would talk to too. But it hit me so hard that it kind of shut me down for the rest of the afternoon. And I kind of went back and sat down and said, okay, let's think about what just happened and why it happened and how do I deal with that? How do I deal with that emotionally? What am I is this the right thing to do to try to be talking to people like this? Um, I talked to two other people at the airport. Well, I talked to one in Tahiti. We got to know this family that was standing in line, and then we saw him again at LAX. His name is Rob. They live in Newport Beach. I got to talking to Rob before we left Tahiti. He's got three young kids. And then when I got to LAX, I talked to Rob some more. And then I did bring out the photo and we did talk. And Rob is overweight. And and I've had some back and forth with Rob, and I need to have some more with him. But that was a really positive experience. The other one that happened at LAX was when I was checking in our bags there because you got to get your bags off the international situation and put them into the domestic situation. So I'm checking in my bags with this guy named Chris, and Chris is probably about 6'4", and he probably weighs 340 pounds. And this is not like this is not like lineman muscle. This is like all in the wrong places. And somehow, as Chris is talking to the gal beside him, um, somehow there's an in for me to say, bring up the kind of weight loss thing. And so I showed Chris my before and after picture. And he was like, wow, so how did you do that? And so we got to talking a little bit, and Chris gave me his information. He gave me, what did Chris give me? He gave me a cell phone number. So I text Chris and then I got an email address. So I'm having some back and forth with Chris. I haven't heard from him for a couple days, but we're going to work on that situation with Chris. So I'd had a couple positive experiences already that day. So when I had that negative experience, it just really hit me hard. There was another guy in that same terminal that I wanted to talk to. He kind of had a pink shirt on, kind of had some longer hair, a beard, not necessarily the guy that I would normally relate to, but the one thing I did relate to him is he had a wife and what looked like four or five, some teenage kids and some younger kids. But this guy was, fairly overweight. He was carrying a pretty good sized belly around there. And I thought, just look at this guy. He's got this beautiful family, and he is likely going to die a decade earlier because of his health conditions. If he doesn't do something to change this and arrest this and reverse this, this guy is probably losing a decade off his life. But not only that, look how much healthier and happier he could feel, and the freedom of movement he could enjoy, and how much more he could enjoy this family, and how much more this family could enjoy him if he was healthier, if he was healthy instead of the situation that he's currently in. I really had this strong desire to want to talk to him, but I felt so shut down by this other experience that I wasn't able to kind of break through my world and have that discussion. I kind of went and sat down in the area where they were. And his daughters were kind of jumping on his back and playing with him some, his little daughters, and I was kind of, laughing about that. And he actually, glanced over at me a couple of times and was just kind of enjoying the laugh a little bit. But but there just wasn't an in that I felt comfortable jumping in there, and I didn't talk to this guy. I was right there. I wanted to talk to him. I knew that I had the potential to transform this guy's life, totally change his life. And yeah, I couldn't break through and have this discussion. And the time came, and they got on their plane to Oklahoma City, and that was that. So I sent him out the door with some good feelings and some well wishes, but I didn't really jump through there and have that discussion. And I feel, how do I feel about that? Like, I feel like I wish I had. I wish I would have been able to break through, but I just couldn't do it that day. I couldn't do it after being hit so hard by that big no. So we'll talk about some of those skills today, and we'll practice some of those skills. I know that's what's coming my way here in about 45 minutes, and I think that will be really interesting and helpful. One of the last things I want to share here, I'm only 17 minutes into this, the whole Wizard of Oz thing. So I was thinking about this morning, and one of the things that we learned from the Wizard of Oz, and I haven't watched the Wizard of Oz for probably at least 20 years. I can't even remember the last time I watched this story, but I pretty much remember it. I think most of us do. The amazing thing about the Wizard of Oz is Dorothy gets to the end, and what does she learn? She learns she learns this amazing truth that she had this power inside of her the entire time. She went on this amazing journey down this yellow brick road looking for this wizard guy, and she meets the scarecrow and the tin man and the lion, and they've all got their individual issues, and none of them are really able to help her right away, but they're all off on this journey to try and discover something that ultimately they realize, and especially for her, they realize that they already had. Like, she already had this power inside of her. She already was. If I can bend the story a little bit, she was already the person that she needed to be. She already had all this inside of her, and really, this journey was really just about uncovering that and helping her to feel and see and understand that. And I think that's the way this little journey is for all of us, or perhaps for most of us. And I think one of the things that has happened to me these last 8 months, not even quite 8 months yet, but getting close, these last 8 months is that I have kind of discovered what Dorothy discovered there, and that is that, and I've always felt this. I've always felt this, but I've discovered that this has always all been here, and it's not something that needs to come from another person. It's not something that that comes with a certain amount of dieting or exercise. It's all something that's just always been there. And more than anything, it's not that I needed more of anything. It's often that I just needed a lot less. And it's amazing when we discover that for ourselves, and whatever that path is, whatever that yellow brick road path is for us, it's likely somewhat different than somebody else's path. But well, it certainly is. It certainly is different. All our paths are very unique in that way. They're similar. They're similar, and there are similar themes, but we all have a very unique path in that way. And that's what our stories bring out. When we can see our stories and share our stories and understand our stories, we can understand our path, then we can much better understand ourselves. And I think that's part of the reason why I like to share those stories, share my stories also, and encourage other people to share theirs. And if anybody ever gets to the point where they're like, I think I want to share my story, uh, just like I bring my sister Cheryl on, I'm happy to bring anybody on and let them share some aspect of their story. So we are all about stories here that cause us to sing and shout. So with that, I'm going to go get ready for my training here today. And I'm going to post this as episode 31, and I may repost the live that I did last night, or I may choose not to. I'm still working through that. Going to talk to Heidi some, and we'll see what gets decided there. But either way, we will. There will be a post tonight, and whether it's that replay or whether it's a new live, there will be a post tonight. So we will catch you all then, and then we are not that far away from Family History Sunday, and we will be jumping back in on Sunday evening to the Miss Thomas Hanson family, and we will carry on with that. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a great Saturday, and we will catch up with